I'm pretty good.
Kelly,
Pretty good.
can you both start talking about how this project came together?
Where do they begin?
She walked in, and there was a draft of a script that she'd done, but the thing that happened was just how much she impacted me in her attitude towards the work, and then there was 4 years, and then there was a sort of new script actually. I think in all honesty a new script that had many ties to some of the key things on the first script, but just this great writer sort of arrived with this draft that was I've never seen anything quite like it in my life. So then we all we just try to do the script. Shorthand
What do
version.
you say about that?
I'd written a draft and then started working with Jim, and one of the best things that he said to me that I'll take with me and to whatever project I do was, let's take a journalistic approach, like go and interview a bunch of teenagers and like just make sure you're getting this right. And so I started to do that and fell in love with the process and just became sort of obsessed about it, and spent 6 months just like hanging out at high schools and talking to teenagers and like anybody who would talk to me, just talking to them for hours. And the thing that was so great is just so many, it just became really clear how complicated it all is. It's a messy age, and so it just became clear that somehow trying to capture that became the mission, capture that honestly. So it shifted the mission a lot.
And by the way, I just want to say, because I do research all the time on everything, but I just found out recently, because I just happened to ask Kelly some of the questions she asked, even though I'd see them occasionally on the videos that we went over, she's gifted at it. So it wasn't just talking, it was drawing them out in an extraordinary way, which I don't know anybody who could do it as well as you did.
Sort of playing off of your question, you've seen a lot of scripts cross your path. What was it about this one that really spoke to you, that it stood out to you?
It was her. It was not the pages. Usually the process you follow when you take something on is, geez, we have a problem in the second act or this character. It wasn't like that. It was just, I don't even know what it was. It was a process, and it was 4 years long, and she happened.
For you, Hailee, how did it appeal to you?
I mean, there was so much about the first read. There were so many things I picked up on the first time after reading this, whereas I feel like normally you read it through one time, kind of decide that you like it, the second time you start to pick up on things. But with this, there were so many nuances and moments that I felt I was discovering on each page, and I thought if only I'll be able to discover them in real time and in real life with Kelly and with Jim, and from the auditioning process to the last take of our last reshoot, there was never a discovery that wasn't being made about this character, about her story, about her intentions, her objectives, her goals, her everything. And I had this feeling that after reading it that first time, that something was in store, some kind of long-term challenge is in this, and I completely realized that and so much more throughout the whole process.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how exhausting was it to write angst?
I mean, it was a lot. Just feeling every possible feeling in every single second of every moment. It was a lot, but so much fun to really just be able to freak out all the time.
And I can relate to that, what your character went through, because when my little sister started dating, I was like, who's this jerk dating her? Taking her away from me. Have you ever felt that way? It's like, I don't know, with friends or anything like that?
Yeah, no, of course. I guess there's always that sort of feeling of, you lose somebody to someone else, and you're like, well, hold on, what about what we had? But yeah, luckily I haven't had any sort of parallel to the brother situation. I have an older brother, haven't had the best friend thing happen yet. Don't really know how I would handle it, but it hasn't happened, so I'm gonna be thankful for that.
Can the three of you talk about who Nadine is in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, not only does she just embody every characteristic every teen has, she's a real person that was put together from real life people and real stories and real emotions. And one thing that stood out to me was that this character is that person that you can watch and listen to and feel like they're you. It's such an honest and painful interpretation of what it's really like being a teenager, what it feels like being a teenager. And in some ways, I didn't really ever get to feel that way myself. I worked through high school and I never really had those moments. I had those moments where I could have freaked out, but I probably would have been fired by someone if I did, because I was working. But being able to just live and feel everything at every moment, this character was so much on the page that I almost felt I had very little to do myself.
James?
An original character. That's, I mean, it starts with that. It doesn't have, I mean, there's nothing generic. A character, and by the way, just one of the privileged performances I've ever been around. And I guess there's no wink at the camera. It's totally played. It's a character who's hard to like, who's hard to get. And nothing says, don't worry, we're really doing a movie here, she's really lovable. Nothing anywhere says that. It's just totally committed performance, which now you take an original character on paper and you get a totally committed performance by somebody who I believe is the actor of her generation. Man, that starts to cook.
Kelly?
I think she's a lot of things at once, and certain things that seem directly opposed to each other. In some instances she's just tough as nails and aggressive and a hard ass, and in others she's so deeply fragile. And she's sort of acting like everything is rolling off her back and she doesn't give a shit, and at the same time everything is going in and she's feeling everything incredibly deeply. And so I think there are a lot of things that she is that I think nobody in the world, I know nobody in the world could have played except Hailee, somehow switching from something that's so opposite, switching from one thing to another on a dime. She just
and
does.
And by the way, we're talking about a comedy, which is really what makes it
and to
interesting.
make it funny,
I think the jacket is the best thing. Do you remember having a piece of clothing when you were younger that you just could not get?
Oh, yes.
You had to wear.
You just made somebody very happy.
I know.
I thought it was on
Handmade.
point.
Oh yeah, thank you. I feel like you have those things that you feel like are part of your identity.
Yeah.
Did
you have something when you were younger? You remember?
I had a few things. I had a pair of shoes that I remember. I was like, I'm cool in these shoes, but that you just wear until you wear them out. Yeah.
How about you, James? Anything you remember?
Hand-me-downs mostly.
No.
Yeah, I don't.
I know you're working through, but there was
Right.
something that you, even when you were like,
I hang on to sweatshirts. Hoodies are my thing. Anytime I can just shut off, hide behind it for a little while, that's what I go to.
for sure.
I'm gonna ask you.
Oh, thank you. Hailee, what's your favorite thing about the friendship between Nadine and Krista, and how was it for you working with Hailee Lou?
Working with her was so much fun. I mean, there are very few people that you can meet and in the first 5 minutes you feel like you've known them for your whole life. And that I was so thankful for, because here we are, sort of, nice to meet you, let's play best friends, and jump right into this. And she was so just fun and real and so positive, and she reminds me of her character. We joke about it all the time, how similar we are in real life, and how our dynamic is so similar to the movie. But my favorite thing about their relationship is just that deep, deep, deep bond that they have, and was formed before they even could comprehend what it was going to be for them. And the realization of a best friend breakup being as devastating as a romantic breakup. feeling like that person that if you were to ever have that romantic breakup is not there, the person that you'd go to. They just have this bond and this love for each other, and this understanding that they don't really have, that Nadine doesn't have with anybody else.
I'm gonna ask you specifically about Woody's in this film.
He was awesome.
He was awesome. Yeah, he was hilarious. I mean, like if a teacher says half the things that he says in film, he or she would get in trouble. But can you talk about writing that for Woody? I mean, this whole sarcasm thing that he's got is perfect.
Oh man, I mean, the thing that was so cool about him is like he got who this guy was so much that then he could just play and he could just riff on him and and try other things and have fun with it. I mean, that was hands down one of the most fun things was watching the two of them, because they so got who these people were and what their dynamic was, that it was fun to to do the script and then always do a take where it was like, all right, whatever you guys want, like just have fun with it, and what would come out of that would be so exciting.
I want to congratulate you all on the tone of the movie. It could have been just this really tragic 17-year-old drama, and it's actually really funny. You mentioned it's a comedy. It is a comedy. Can you talk, this is for the three of you, navigating that tone and making sure it was serious, but at the same time it's a comedy. We still have those laughs constantly there.
Yeah. Well, for me, I've always like the way I find my way into something painful is through comedy. So for me, the two fit together. But I also thought, it was important to me to allow her pain to be real and allow her to express it, but also have, and a lot of times it was Woody express the absurdity of it. And you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world, really, In a lot of ways, his character was important to constantly sort of remind you, like, it's how kind of myopic you can become, and swept up in your own pain to the point that you can't see anything else. Sort of for him to remind you it's not all that bad.
James, anything about that?
I was just thinking about it. I always think, comedy. You say a picture's a comedy because when people must go ha 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 regularly. I mean, that's what it is. There's no other explanation for it but that you clock your laughs, and sometimes Hailee did it where you'd have to put it under a microscope to find out what she was doing, and she'd know that was funny, and it's from seeing the picture 2 million times that I get to see that. But the thing you work on the most is the truth of it, and that's the platform for the comedy. When it works like this, that you're doing righteous work all the time, and I think it just, personally for my life, I've always felt when you do that in a comedy, that's the holy grail.
I think I was just to add, I think that's true. I think like the truth, trying to get something real, was always the boss, and yeah.
And Hailee, did you mean that your character sometimes we see her, we suffer through her, but at the same time we're laughing?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that comedy is in her being so overdramatic,
Yeah.
and it being so painfully awkward and humiliating that whether or not it brings us back to that moment where we kind of need the release of just laugh, those moments come in so perfectly timed. I feel where you're like, some of these scenes, they're so funny and you're laughing and it just goes away and it's like back to real life, because that's it's not a consistent sort of up. It's the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and within that there's comedy. It's real life.
And shocking lines. And I think that's part of the ingredient, because there's times when you feel the audience go, you just went too far, which is sort of great,
Totally. Oh my god.
I was curious about the fact that Nadine is watching Futurama. I don't know if that was a nod.
It was the cheapest thing we could get.
Okay, no, I thought maybe it was a nod to your Pitch Perfect mom, or maybe if it says something about the character. Or
It says something about the accountants.
There you go. That's fine.
You spoke about the research, talking to teenagers. Was there anything that you got from there that made it into the movie? Any kind of anecdotes or?
You know, it was really more, the thing I got was no matter who I talked to across the social spectrum, everybody was dealing with the same thing. And that was just like, the more kids I talked to, the more I just felt like this general thing kind of bubbling up out of all the stories and just trying to capture that essence. So it was really that.
And you know what just occurred to me thinking of the videos that you brought in that we saw, bravery.
Mm-hmm.
They were so damn brave.
That was the other thing is, I mean, to share their stories and
And to survive their story.
yeah, and open. I was also just amazed how open they were and how willing to share stuff that was a lot of times very vulnerable to put out there. You know.
I was want to talk about Hayden. Oh, sorry.
This seems like a movie that kind of people have been buzzing about for quite a few months now, and now that it's about to arrive on screen, how are you each feeling? Is it kind of like letting go of a child going out into the world? Are you nervous, anxious, excited?
It's funny you say. I literally was talking to a friend last night, and I was saying that exact feeling. Like it feels, there's like a little bit of empty nest almost, you know, because it's like for a while it's this thing where you're all working on it and you're all. It can't breathe without all of you. You know, you're pushing it forward each step, and then suddenly it's just walking and it's on its own and it's out there, and it's a strange sensation. Yeah.
I'd say it's
Give
dropping.
2 minutes, guys.
I'd say it's dropping a baby off with a babysitter you're not sure of.
That's great.
I want to ask you about Hayden because I think he's a discovery. Can you talk about him and working with him?
He's amazing.
Yeah.
He is so. I mean, one thing, you know, time we were given so much freedom to do what we wanted, especially once we knew we had it. We would give it that extra couple takes and just, Kelly would say, run with it, do whatever you want. And a lot of the times we would just sit in silence. And I could tell, I mean, I was trying to come up with something to say. He was trying to come up with something to say. And the best thing about it was the silence and the awkwardness of just sitting in it and trying to figure it out. He personally is just so great. And so many of the laughs I have in reaction to what he says were so genuine. I mean, he was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jim?
He, you know, like, there's stuff that he does that you just, like, you can't write, you can't direct. You know, he's just, his, like, the example I give is the way he answers the phone when she calls and he says, "How are you?" 600 times, you know, like you can't put that on the page and you can't tell somebody how to do that. It's just him, you know, he just, and in a lot of ways he got, he was one of the first people we cast, which was also shocking. We thought that would be somebody that, you know, would be harder to find. And he walked in and he was that guy and he just got it. He just showed up with, you know, with this character. Like he got who he was on the page, but then he elevated it and he added his own stuff. And yeah, he's got a lightning fast mind. He really does.
following up on that, how was writing the story within a story when you were doing Irwin's student film? Was maybe similar to maybe something you had created early on in your career, or?
No, I hadn't, but it was really just kind of trying to get into his mindset and also trying to asking myself, what would he say about their relationship? You know, what would his take be on that? It was a lot of fun though to find his artistic style, you know, and that was something that, you know, we worked with David Silverman who does The Simpsons, and finding how this person draws and how they express themselves was cool, you know. So
For sure. And working with Mr. Brooks, who is, you know, such a legend in this field. What did you take from him? Any lessons?
Oh man, so I mean,
Posture, man.
so many things every day. But I think, but the main thing I think is just that I think Jim always has an incredible sense of what is the most important thing, and in this case, it was always just Are we telling the truth? You know, and maybe that's the most important thing in any film, right? Any film that you've done, and there are a million different things that can take your attention, you know, while you're on set. But just to have somebody who reminds you always that that's like, to forget about everything else, that's the most important thing, is a great gift.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.